All right, let's dive into Path of Exile 2. You've given us a mountain of info to go through: live stream transcripts, early access details. It all comes down to one question. Can a hardcore game like this really be a haven for casual players?
It's a good question, especially with Path of Exile's reputation. But what's interesting from all this material is how much they're focusing on the endgame content. 7 different systems, each with their own progression areas, bosses, rewards. It seems like they really want people to play long term, which is good for every player, casual or not.
Yeah, and they're upfront about how much time it takes. 25 hours is for the first 3 acts. That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
why we're focusing on the end game. We want to see if Path of Exile 2 really shines there for people with limited playtime.
Yeah. And the way they structured early access is interesting. Launching with a cruel difficulty mode, basically a new game plus, means that even players who don't have time for all 10 acts can get to the end game faster. It's like they're saying, hey, we know you're busy, so let's get to the fun stuff.
That's what every casual player wants to hear. But with so many systems, it could be overwhelming. Breaches, rituals, delirium, it's a lot. What stands out to you as really interesting or maybe even intimidating for a casual player?
The Atlas itself is a cool idea for dealing with that. It's like a world map for the endgame that keeps growing with different biomes, hidden camps, even customizable hideouts. You're not just grinding the same stuff over and over, you're exploring, discovering, choosing what you want to do.
So it's not just about difficulty, it's about choices.
Exactly. It's about having control. You're not stuck doing just one thing. You can focus on what you like. Want to hunt bosses? There's a whole part of the Atlas tree for that. Love making crazy items. Check out the rituals and collect those powerful omens. They're like crafting blueprints.
Okay, blueprints, I like that. But let's get specific. Say I only have a couple hours a week to play. How does Path of Exile 2 make those hours feel meaningful, even if I'm not doing the hardest stuff?
Well, even the hardest content, like the Uber Act bosses and that weird fortress thing, is totally optional. You can have fun just exploring the lower levels of the Atlas, messing with builds, and collecting unique items.
So you're not punished for not being a hardcore player.
Not at all. The game seems to reward you for playing it no matter how much time you put in.
Yeah.
You can adjust the difficulty and rewards to fit your playstyle using that flexibility we talked about.
Okay, that's good to hear. But there's still 7 endgame systems. It's hard to imagine that much variety. Can we break down what makes each one special and how those differences might appeal to different types of casual players?
Definitely. Let's start with breaches because they're a classic example of controlled chaos.
It sounds like my kind of thing.
Imagine tears in reality opening up and demons pouring out. Your goal: kill them as fast as you can because the faster you kill, the more loot you get. Simple concept, but it feels good, especially if you love loot.
Okay, that sounds a little like Diablo, which I like. What about the rewards? Is it just random stuff or is there something special to look for?
This is where it gets cool. Breaches have special rings called breach rings. They can be super powerful, and you can only get them from breaches. It shows how each system has its own unique style and rewards for different players.
Score 1 for the loot lovers.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's move on. What about those rituals? You mentioned crafting blueprints.
Right. Rituals are a bit different. Imagine sacrificing monsters to a creepy king in the mists who gives you loot and these omens. Each omen is like a blueprint that lets you change item mods when you're crafting. It's great for players who like making cool gear but don't have tons of time for hardcore crafting.
So it's a more streamlined, casual, friendly way to craft.
Exactly. And speaking of streamlining, let's talk about delirium.
Oh, I've heard about delirium. Tell me more.
Delirium is where things get really weird. It's like this swirling mist that covers an area and makes everything harder, but also gives you better rewards. The further you go into the mist, the crazier it gets, with monsters changing and multiplying like crazy.
Sounds intense. But you said something about streamlining. How does a system with more monsters make things easier for a casual player?
Delirium has this unique reward: distilled emotions. They're like little drops of passive skill power that you can use to put passive skills directly onto your gear.
Wait, so I can skip that huge passive skill tree and just get the bonuses on my items.
Yeah.
That's amazing for someone who doesn't have hours to spend planning out builds.
Exactly. It's a way to get the power of passive skills without getting lost in the tree. You can focus on the main skills you like and use the distilled emotions to fill in the gaps.
Okay, I'm starting to see how they're making even the hardcore stuff more casual friendly. But what about getting to the end game? We talked a lot about those 7 systems, but how does leveling up your character work in Path of Exile 2? Can a casual player still enjoy all the character options without getting overwhelmed?
Absolutely. They've actually made some smart changes to make character progression easier without making it less deep.
Like what? Give me some examples.
We'll take the classes, for example. They're starting with 6. Monk, Warrior, Ranger, Mercenary, Witch, and Sorceress. Each one feels different. But here's the thing. You're not stuck with only certain skills.
So I could have a warrior that uses spells, or a sorceress that fights up close.
Exactly. If you see a skill gem you like, you can use it no matter what class you are. It's all about finding combinations that work for you.
That's pretty cool.
Uh,
So much freedom. But what about that huge passive skill tree? It's famous for being really big and complicated. How does that work for casual players?
It's true, the passive tree is still massive, over 1,500 nodes, but they've made it less scary. For one, the beginning parts are more focused with clear paths and bonuses for each class. It's not like you're just looking at a giant web and have no idea where to start.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if I mess up? Am I stuck with a bad build forever?
Not at all. You can change your skill points pretty easily, especially early in the game. They want you to try things out to find what you like. It's part of that focus on player choice we keep seeing.
I'm also curious about those weapon specialization points they talked about in the live stream. How do those work? Do I need to be some kind of expert to use them?
That's a neat new thing that lets you customize your character even more. Basically, you put these points into parts of the tree that match different weapon types. So if you're using a sword and shield, you can specialize in skills that make your sword and shield better.
Sounds simple enough. But there's got to be a twist, right?
This is where it gets really interesting. You can have multiple specializations. When you switch between weapons, your passive tree actually changes to match your active specialization.
Hold on. So I could have a setup for my two-handed mace, another for my bow and arrow, and switch between them whenever I want.
Yep. It's huge for builds that use different weapons, and it lets you try out different play styles without having to redo your whole skill tree. You can adapt to different situations and have fun with different things, even if you're not a hardcore theory crafter.
Wow, my head is spinning thinking about all the build possibilities.
hmm
But let's be honest, a big part of what makes games fun for casual players is the loot.
And Path of Exile 2 definitely delivers. They've made some big changes to items to make them more rewarding, even for players who don't grind for hours.
Like what? Tell me all about it.
Well, they've increased how often you find currency items. You use these to change and upgrade your gear, and having more of them means you can experiment with crafting and make powerful items more easily.
That's great to hear. I remember feeling like I could never get enough currency to do anything fun with my gear in the first Path of Exile.
They've also changed how vendors work. You can now buy specific items you need instead of just hoping they drop randomly.
So less grinding, more targeted shopping.
Exactly. They even added a gambling system where you can spend gold for a chance to get a random item of a specific type. It's a fun way to maybe get upgrades without farming forever.
I always like a little gamble. But what about those legendary uniques? The crazy items with unique powers that can totally change a build. Are those still hidden behind hours and hours of grinding?
They're still there, and they're as crazy as ever. In the live stream, we saw a ring that turns dead bodies into exploding poison clouds and armor that lets you teleport through enemies by turning into sand.
Okay, those sound ridiculously awesome. But are they still super rare? Because as a casual player, I don't want to feel like I'm missing out on the best gear just because I don't play all the time.
Good news. They design most uniques to be useful at any point in the game. Even if you find one early on, it can still be strong and fun to use. You're not punished for not having the absolute best item.
So even if I don't find the perfect unique for my build, I can still find something cool and powerful to experiment with.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the main point. Path of Exile 2's character progression is all about giving players power no matter how experienced they are or how much time they have. You have tons of choices for classes, skills, and the passive tree. You can craft and upgrade your gear more easily than ever, and even the rarest items are designed to be accessible and fun.
It's a long way from that hardcore only image that Path of Exile has had for years.
It definitely seems that way. But we'll see for sure when Early Access comes out. What can players really expect when they jump into the game on December 6th?
Well, that's a conversation for another time. We'll be right back to talk about what you can expect when you finally get your hands on Path of Exile 2. All right, so let's talk about early access. December 6th is almost here, and I'm really excited to play this game.
Yeah, everyone's getting hyped, and this isn't just a little demo or anything. Path of Exile 2's early access is going to be huge. 50 bosses, 400 monster types, 6 classes, 7 endgame systems. It's a lot.
I know, right? It's like a whole game already. But what does that actually mean for players, especially casual ones? How much can we actually see and do during early access?
Well, we know the first 3 acts of the campaign will be there, which is a lot of gameplay, like we said before, around 25 hours for a new player even before replaying.
And then there's that cruel difficulty mode, which is like a new game plus still. So even without all 10 acts, there's still tons to do and level up our characters and try different builds.
Exactly. And remember, grinding your games is focusing almost completely on the end game now. So what we're getting in early access is a really polished version of that core end game experience. It's like they're saying, here's the heart of the game, come see if you like it.
That's awesome news for casual players like me. We can jump right into the good stuff without feeling like we're missing something important. But what about updates? How often will we get new content and stuff during early access?
They haven't given us exact dates, but they said they plan to double the size of the game during early access before the full release.
Double the size, so more classes, more endgame systems, more everything.
Sounds like it. They want to have 12 classes and even more endgame content when the full game comes out. They're really going all out to make this a massive game that keeps growing.
Okay, this is all sounding incredible. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Access. We know that for early access, you need a key to get in.
Right. They're giving keys to people who already play Path of Exile and have spent a certain amount of money, and also to people who buy one of the new early access supporter packs.
Some players might be bummed about that, but those supporter packs look pretty good. They have different options from cosmetic items and in-game currency to real-world stuff like t-shirts, hoodies, and even an art book. Plus, you're supporting the game, which is always cool.
Totally. And the early access supporter packs come at different prices, so there's something for everyone. Even the basic pack with the game key and some in-game points is a good deal.
So let's talk to you, our listener. If you're already a huge Path of Exile fan, you're probably already downloading the game. But
Yeah.
if you're a casual player, maybe you're curious about Path of Exile 2, but a little scared of its reputation, this early access is a great chance to try it out.
It's a chance to see what the game is really about, to try out the new character progression, to get a taste of all that awesome endgame variety. Who knows? You might end up loving it. Path of Exile 2 is looking like a really special game, something that players of all skill levels and time commitments can enjoy.
And that's exactly what we've been trying to figure out today. From what we've seen, Path of Exile 2 seems to have a lot of depth and flexibility for casual players. It's not just about surviving in this brutal world, it's about choosing your own path, going at your own pace, and having fun along the way.
Exactly. The game seems designed for both hardcore and casual players. There's a lot there for people who want to master everything, but it's also easy to pick up and rewarding for people who want to jump in, have some fun, and make progress without playing all the time.
So the question is Path of Exile 2 casual friendly? Well, we'll let you decide. But based on everything we've talked about today, I think it's worth trying. Who knows, maybe you'll find your new favorite game.
Yeah, that's what makes this so exciting. It has the potential to be a really diverse and engaging game. Only time will tell what kind of adventures are waiting for us in Path of Exile 2.